and welcome to the SEC Unfiltered platform. Guys, ladies, gentlemen, I appreciate you listening to all our content on all our social media platforms here at the SEC Unfiltered platform. But I am your host, Dave Shumate, longtime personnel director in the SEC, worked in recruiting departments for 7-8 years in the Southeastern Conference. But I'm here to give you today, who are the top 5 impact players for Alabama heading in to the 2024 season? I'll be honest, this was a tough team to really break down from an impact player because there's so many. I mean, you know, Kalen DeBoer, new sheriff in town, Kane Womack, new DC in town, Nick Sheridan, he's going to take over the play calling duties. Jamarcus Shepard going to take over the play calling duties. There's just a lot of new faces in Tuscaloosa. So I'm here to give you the top 5 impact players in Tuscaloosa heading into 2024. But as you know, guys, we got to pay the bills before we get to this segment. Guys, go join our guys at MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag and use code SECU and sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. Guys, you can bet on Major League Baseball right now. We've got college football not that far away. If you're just a total freak and you're betting on preseason football, we're not that far away either. I hadn't looked at it, couldn't even tell you who's playing in the Hall of Fame game. But that should be coming up. You can bet on that. When college football season rolls around, you best believe I'll be logging into that, betting with our buddies over at MyBookie. They covered our trip, sponsored our trip over at SEC Media Days in Dallas. So go check those guys out. Again, use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. But let's get to it, guys. Counting down from 5 to 1. Top 5 impact players for the Crimson Tide in 2024. It is Devontae Smith. If he can stay healthy, it's his time to shine, guys. He's going to be mainly that Husky position that is so important in the Kane Womack 4-2-5 defense. It's like I said, it's his time to shine. Gone is everyone on the back end outside of Malachi Moore, and he transferred to the true safety spot. So Devontae Smith will be maintaining this Husky position. Smith, as we all know, guys, if you watch any of his film with him coming up, it's a little bit of time he's played in college. Good frame. He carries that 200-pound frame really well. He also a very cerebral kid. If you go look at some interviews with Kane Womack in the spring, he can make all the checks, adjustments. That's going to be key at that Husky position. And Kane Womack's even admitted it. The Husky position is so critical to what they do. I mean, they ask a ton. He can play. He's going to have to play man-to-man, blitz off the edge, play in zone. Sometimes he's just going to have to go sit in the box. He's going to have to pit that box. They're going to ask him to do a lot. And so it's a very versatile skill set. And they like what Devontae Smith, not the receiver, guys, for people that are unfamiliar with the roster, but Smitty, the new Smitty, they like what he can do. So I think he's going to have a massive impact on a secondary that's got a lot of holes. Like I mentioned, Malachi Moore is the only guy back, especially after losing Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terran Arnold to the NFL draft, and then Caleb Downs to Ohio State. There's a lot of question marks back there. A lot of question marks. Devontae Smith's ability to have an impact on that Husky position, I think, is going to be key. He's not talked about enough. Some may argue he's a little too high here, but I think that back end will be critical, and it's going to set the tone to how good Alabama's going to be. They're going to be good, but will they be championship level good? I think Devontae Smith at that Husky position, one of the more important roles in the Kane Womack defense, will have a massive say in that. Number 4, let's stay on the back end, folks. Let's stay on the back end. Again, this is uncharted territory for some Alabama fans. They're not used to having as many question marks as they did because, I mean, the old sheriff of town, Nick Saban, the greatest of all time, that used to be his spot. And that usually was rarely, maybe 2014 was the last time I could remember this many question marks on the back. You remember the Cyrus Jones, Eddie Jackson days. But speaking of Jackson, number 4, Damani Jackson, the USC transfer, the 6'1", 190-pounder, played 668 snaps in 11 games last season in LA. Recorded 33 tackles, 3 pass breakups, 20 catches he gave up for 411 yards, 215 after the catch, and 2 touchdowns, was penalized 5 times. Those are just stats, probably went in one year and out the other for you. But he currently possesses the most experience of any corner on the Alabama roster. I mean, point blank, Alabama needs him to be an impact player at the very least early. You got to contribute early. I mean, if you're sitting back there, if you're Maurice Linguist, if you're Kane Womack, the guys who are going to handle that Alabama back end, maybe he's just warming the stove while guys like young cats like Xavier Brown, Zay Mincy, and Jalen Mbakwe get their feet wet. Maybe by the middle of the year, towards the end of the year, maybe one of them steps up. That would be worst case scenario. You just want him to man that early on. He's going to be tested early when they play South Florida. and Alex Golish and the boys coming to town. Now don't get things twisted. Damani Jackson was a highly rated player himself coming out of high school. I believe off the top of my head, he was a 5-star, top 15, top 20 player overall in his class. So he has ability. He's played, but he's the most polished, experienced DB, or corner, I should say, just corner at Alabama's in that room heading into the season. He's going to have a massive say, in my opinion, on how vulnerable the Tide secondary will be in the months of probably September and October. So he comes in at number 4 for me. It's going to have a massive impact. Again, there's some guys I would like to filter in. I'm going to bring them up at the end, some guys I'd like to add to the list. But again, the secondary is such a big question mark for this team. I had to go 5 and 4 here with our guy Devontae Smith and Damani Jackson coming in here. I think those were no-brainers from that standpoint. Number 3, we're going to stay on the defensive side of the ball. First 3 guys you hear, guys, Deontay Lawson, probably arguably the leader of this defense, linebacker. The Tide's second leading tackler in 2023 is back to man one of the more deeper front sevens in the SEC. I mean, I think there's a lot of good front sevens in the SEC this year, but Alabama's going to have one of the better ones as well. He will also be wearing the green dot, folks. And if you're not familiar with the green dot, that is the new term that will be used in college football this year. He will be the guy that has the helmet communicator on the defense that new DC Kane Womack will be communicating with. Some argue is this an offensive or defensive advantage. I lean it's an offensive advantage because, first of all, offense always has an advantage. They know what they're going to run. The defense is reacting. So just off the top of my head, the offense is still going to have that advantage. But to my point here, Deontay Lawson will have that green. You'll see it on his helmet this year. He will have the green sticker in the back of it like you see in the NFL on Sundays. But Lawson needs to stay healthy to have this impact, and I think he will. From when I've talked to people, he's got his body better. And another thing, he's got to improve playing in space, covering running backs out of the backfield on wheel routes, covering tight ends up the seam. He's got to do a better job of that, and I think he will. He's going to be in on every play in the run game. He is. He's always going to be around, getting a bunch of assists there, if not getting the complete tackle. But his ability to improve in space, stay healthy, will have a big say on how good this Alabama defense, specifically the front seven, can be in Kalen DeBoer's first season in Tuscaloosa. Because I think the defensive line is as deep as it's been in a while. I think it's as deep. Maybe not have that true dude, but the defensive line goes, I think, 8 to 10 deep. They're deep. They're really deep. That's going to help guys like Deontay Lawson, Jahad Campbell. Number 2, this was a portal pickup, but also a returner, guys. None other than left tackle Caden Proctor. There wasn't a bigger addition this offseason than returning left tackle Caden Proctor. Look, he went through some growing pains in his first season at left tackle in the SEC, but who wouldn't? What true freshman wouldn't? Especially when you're adjusting to competition from Iowa high school football to the SEC. Come on. Anyone that has a very rudimentary understanding of college football in the SEC would understand that. But he played well down the stretch. I think he was freshman of the week against Auburn, played well, highest graded player for Alabama against Georgia. From talking to other staff, they liked the way he played down the stretch. Now, Rose Bowl wasn't great, but he had a ligament issue on his foot that he didn't play well in, and a lot of Alabama's offense didn't play well in that game against Michigan. But homesick, he had a lot of anxiety. Nick Saban had convinced him to come back. Obviously, Nick Saban retires. He goes back home to Iowa. Maybe he said one of maybe the worst decisions he's ever made. Came back, I think, visited some of his teammates at spring break. Hey, Alabama welcomed him back with open arms. And let's be honest, this was a giant question mark in the spring for Alabama. This is going to have an important ripple effect on Alabama's entire offense, but specifically the offensive line. It allowed Elijah Pritchett to slide back to right tackle where he's more comfortable, where he'll compete with other guys like Wilkin Formby and Miles McVay. It only makes Alabama deeper. This is a big impact player for Alabama. You can make a case this maybe be number 1, but number 1, we're going to go to the most important position in the sport of football, probably in the entire sports world, the quarterback position, none other than Jalen Milroe. No surprise here. Starting quarterback of a preseason top 10 team. Milroe has 2 seasons of eligibility remaining. But come on, guys, we can admit, one way or the other, this feels like it'll be the final season for Jalen Milroe in Alabama. Either he takes that next step, develops, probably enters the NFL draft, or questions linger and Alabama probably looks elsewhere in 2025. Let's be honest. I hate to be that harsh, but that's the world we live in. The positive for Milroe is, though, he's got one of probably the best, if top 2, top 3 best offensive mind in the country in the sport right now is his head coach, Kalen DeBoer. And he's also quoted as saying, I think he was on CBS yesterday, how personable he is, how DeBoer's office is set up where it's very player friendly. It's open to discussion. He likes hanging out with the players. He has his all the players have his personal cell phone. Not saying Nick Saban wasn't personal, but we all know that. The GOAT was down to business, very structured oriented, was close with his players in a certain way, but it kind of feels different. And especially if you're the offensive coordinator or play caller, you need to be really close with your quarterback. Remember, Nick Saban was a defensive guy. DeBoer's an offensive guy. Probably the best hire Greg Byrne could have done for the development of Jalen Milroe. I think he's going to take that next step. And how Milroe progresses as a passer under Nick Sheridan, Kalen DeBoer, I think it's just going to have a massive impact, not only in Tuscaloosa, like I'm repeating myself here, but for the sport in general. And some may think that's a bold statement, but if Jalen Milroe takes that next step, and let's just say he's kind of in that Heisman kind of conversation. He's in New York come mid-December, just in that conversation. Alabama's in the playoffs and competing for a national title. Like if he takes that next step, secondary improves, obviously conversation for another time. But if Jalen Milroe takes that next step under Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan, look out. Look out. I'm just telling you. But I think he has to come in number one, not only because Jalen Milroe has that, he can be that guy that impacts just how the sport will be in 2024, but also Alabama. And it's also the most important position in all of sports. And it's a quarterback-driven sport right now at the college level and in the NFL. If you don't have an elite one, you're probably not going to go win a national championship. Not probably, you are. I'll say that. You are. And I mentioned some other guys that just missed the cut that I'd like to add. Parker Brailsford, I wanted to add him, the center coming over from Washington with Kalen DeBoer and them. Wanted to bring him up because remember, it was Seth McLaughlin last year, who's now at Ohio State. Alabama had snap issues. He wasn't with Alabama in the spring, Brailsford, but seems like he takes that next step forward. Because I believe Brockermeyer, who transferred to TCU, was manning the one reps with the center for Alabama in the spring. But Parker Brailsford is a guy that certainly should be in this conversation. You could easily make an argument he should be in this top five. I think Kendrick Law is going to be a freak show for them this year. I think he's going to be one of those guys. Jeremy Bernard be in this conversation as well. And then Alabama, who replaces some of that edge production left by Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner? Is it who means that wolf position? Quindarius Robinson? Is it Keno Cote in the wolf position as well? And then Quay Rusall, who's a highly ranked kid. One of those guys needs to step up and be a premier pass rusher. So I think one of those three guys between Cote, Robinson, and Rusall is going to have an impact. I just feel it. One of them at that wolf position for Kane Womack in this new 4-2-5 defense will have a say. So some other guys I hated leaving off. I'm going to do this for all the SEC teams, all 16 teams. I think Alabama's going to be one of the ones that I had struggled the most where I think you could make a case for a lot of guys to be in this top five, guys. I really do. But top five most impactful players for the Tide. Coming at number 5, Devontae Smith at that Husky position, an important position in the Kane Womack defense. He's going to have an impact. Damani Jackson, the most experienced corner for Alabama, coming in, transferring from USC. At the very least, he mans that spot while guys like Xavier Brown, Zay Mincy, and Jalen Mbakwe get their feet wet, the young cats. Deontay Lawson, leader of the defense. Green dot on his helmet, guys. Remember, he'll be the communicator on the defensive side of the ball for the Tide. A big returnee, a big get in the portal after the spring edition. Caden Proctor coming back over from Iowa. That answers a lot of questions for Bama, I'm just telling you. And then Jalen Milroe, QB1, guys. You go as far as your quarterback takes you, and he's also paired up with probably the best play caller in college football right now. Jalen Milroe, Kalen DeBoer could be a dynamic duo there. But, guys, I appreciate you joining us on this segment of who will be the top 5 most impactful players for the Alabama Crimson Tide in 2024. I think you make an argument for a couple of different players. Tell me what you think about our list, guys. But again, go follow us on all our social media platforms. Like, subscribe, rate, review. Tell us how we can improve college football just around the corner, guys. We start fall camp next week, man. But for Dave Shumate, I appreciate you joining us. You have a phenomenal day.